when I think about wounds, and to be a bit nursey about it, a wound, you have the depth of the wound, you have how the wound is healing, and a wound could be healing and then something gets in it and there's an infection. So a wound can be not that deep, or it can be deep. The wound in itself is not the problem, it's the infection and how you treat it. And if you don't treat it, actually, you can get sepsis and you can die. And so for me, the image of a wound is really important when you talk about race and racism. Because in health, the virus in the wound of racism for me is a misunderstanding.
I think community trauma, I think it's as being such a cataclysmic change. It's often the sort of microaggressions, the constant undermining, the constant way you have to keep on checking yourself just to exist in a community, where everything is a black issue. Going to the shops, going to school, getting dressed, buying a paper, not just voting or living your life.
Yeah.
Everything becomes an additional pressure, and you carry that additional weight on you all the time, and it weighs you down.
Yeah.
And because you are collectively traumatized, you have adaptations that fit so you can live that way. I think people do self-medicate with drugs, they do other kinds of things, and they have adaptations that make them less amenable in larger white society. I think that's part of what happens. I think, and also there's a level of experience, lived and shared experience, that gives a community an identity and an expectation of poor service and poor outcome. That means it fosters poor engagement and poor alignment with services. Therefore, it's hard to have that conversation about what do I need, what do we need, what do you want to own.
Our experience was silenced, not as much as the voices, but our experiences were mostly silenced, and nobody even gave us the space or the time to actually listen to how we felt and process it as well, to even get the statistics about what actually we are experiencing as a black community. And that's what makes it so frustrating, especially being 26. It's hard for me to explain that to people, and I didn't even understand before I came here that what opening a room meant in that sort of context, because it's just quite traumatic. Psychosis is not the only mental health problem when it comes to drugs. You can suffer from other things like beforehand. That's why you picked up the drugs, and that's why you're trying to suppress those emotions. And that's why it makes me sad that my doctors, they never saw the fact that I was dealing with things beforehand, but they just made it feel like it's the drugs to get what I need. And it's a bit disheartening. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's just really depressing, because I haven't been able to really explain and break down how I feel as myself in my head to my doctors, because I just think they see this black girl that just runs around the hood and smokes weed. But that's really not who I am. And yeah, it's really frustrating. I'm getting a bit overwhelmed. So.
Yeah, I know. Because, Zena, your story is, we were talking earlier, weren't we, about whether or not things have changed, and I think the part of my personality is I want things to be better, and sometimes I see, what it is that's making things better.
So next year is the 75th anniversary of the NHS, and it's interesting that we're having these conversations in 2022 about compassion, about care, about empathy. And if you look at how the NHS was constructed by Nan Bevan all those years ago, it was based on those core principles. The only thing that wasn't added at that time was equity. It's taken about 70 odd years to make the case around equality to equity.
Practical term for me, I'm a trauma surgeon. I work in East London. I look after young boys and girls who've been shot and stabbed on a day-to-day basis, and I see the results of an unfair system impacting on a black community disproportionately. And I see how that system treats them badly and serves them poorly in the future. And for me, it's about understanding how we can build a better society, how the NHS can stop this happening. So for me, Open Wings is about us listening better, hearing better, and doing better.
The NHS doesn't recognise community trauma anyway. I mean, it doesn't recognise even the whole stuff around Hillsborough, which affected, as you know, it's over 30 years ago. It's only been, on the last couple of years that's been recognised. I mean, internationally, places like New Zealand, Australia recognise community trauma. Often that's in the context of major changes like volcanic eruptions or tsunamis. So there's lots of international thinking around research around community trauma, how communities traumatised around natural disaster. But when you come into, you want to talk about disasters which are socially engineered, i.e. structural racism, stop and search, for the last 30, 40 years. I mean, I know guys who were stopped and searched 30, 40 years ago are still traumatised. I mean, nobody's talking about the stories of young men now. So it's the community trauma's on different levels. But the key, but it's not recognised. What's recognised is individual interpretations of community trauma. You're schizophrenic, you're bipolar, you've got psychosis, and that might be, and there are people who are genuinely having those issues. But sometimes, if you look at the context of the lived experience, then you know it's a wider thing.
Some of those wounds that we're going through, some of those deep-seated wounds that are born out of colonialization and enslavement and indentureship. How do we collectively hold each other and heal, supporting the structure, because we're all going to be using the NHS at some point. So supporting the structure, but healing on a community level. And when I say healing, I mean that in the deepest sense of the word, not just the physical healing, but the mental, emotional, and spiritual healing.
We're very proud in this country that we've got the best healthcare system, but why do you feel a degree of trepidation going to your local A&E, just in case you might be slighted or dehumanised in our process? So it tells me that we've still got a long way to go